Olá, damos continuidade agora à nossa programação, nosso primeiro simpósio internacional de comunicação social.
Hello, everyone.
This roundtable on this symposium of international communication about social haptic communication. I'm Alex Lins. I'm an interpreter guide, and I'm here as Master of Ceremonies telling about myself. I'm a young person with a beard, dark skin, curly hair, a salmon shirt, and a black blazer with a white background behind me. Also, Vinicius Lionel, wearing a black shirt. He's got a ponytail, a light beard, and he's got a white background behind him. I'd like to also take an opportunity to tell everyone to share this link on YouTube for anyone who wants for free to check it out, and also for the fact that we have mini workshops tomorrow. So please click like on our channel and we'll receive notifications. This actually helps everyone to know what's going on and to keep aware of our whole program, extensive program, including tomorrow. Anyone who'd like to register can click on the link in the video description on YouTube and still register, even if you want to get a certificate for your participation. I'd also like to thank all of our interpreters in Libras, English, and Portuguese, making our event more accessible to a broader audience. In this roundtable, the mediator will be Professor Marcia Noronha. And here she is. We'll start with audio description.
Can you hear me in English? It's okay. I'm in the right channel. Good morning, everyone. This panel is offered in English, but you have the translation. I'm a person, a woman with white skin, gray hair, and I'm wearing a black shirt. Today, we have international guests for our panel that has as a title, the theme will be the social haptic communication and its developments and possibilities. Our guests will speak in English, but they will have the translation through our interpreters. That will be the Alex, am I right? And Andrew and Stephanie. Okay, sorry. Now I invite to appear here in our screen Professor Dr. Rita Latiner. She's going to be our first speaker. She's a woman with blonde hair.
Blonde.
Hair. Well, I can see it is blonde. She has some, I don't know how to say, but you have some color.
Flowers.
In her hair. She's a white person, and she's also wearing a black shirt. She's at home. She's at her side is Russ Palmer, and he's part of our panel too. I will describe him when he comes to his speech. So please, Rita, start, because my English is not really the best one, but I hope you could understand this. Well, you are very welcome. We are very pleased to have you here, and the word is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia. Your English
Muito obrigado.
is good.
Seu inglês é maravilhoso.
Very, very clear. No problem at
Muito
all.
claro, sem problemas.
And it's so lovely to see you and your
É
Gepicsh,
grande prazer ver
Social Haptic
vocês e o
Communication
grupo de pesquisa
Research Group.
Gepicsh, o grupo de comunicação
Now I don't know,
social.
because I only hear the Portuguese translation. Is that disturbing now our communication?
I can hear you in English.
Yes, I'm just looking about that. Okay, good, because I can also hear the Portuguese one, and now it stopped. Good. Okay, and very cold, wintry greetings from Finland. We are here with Russ, and Russ is next to me there, and I have a foot contact to him, so I'm giving some feedback using haptices. First, I like to share last 30 years historical journey of social haptic communication. My interest on this field started about 35 years ago. So long way, but it has given me a lot of interesting research groups. I have met many people around the world. I have met many deafblind people and also their family members. And it has been very interesting to see how social haptic communication has developed to the state where it is now. Brazil is one of the top countries, and I know that you are the second country I know who has this international social haptic conference. So congratulations for that, for your research group and your deafblind people and all your researchers. 30 years ago, or 35 years ago, when I met Russ, I didn't know much about touch messages to the body. But when we started to live together, I noticed that I have a lot of information, what Russ is giving to me. They are situations where the hearing aids were not functioning, or there were a lot of background noisiness, or I was guiding him, or when we were sharing normal kitchen cooking stuff next to each other. You know, sometimes your hands are occupied, they could be a little bit wet, or if you are eating, so you don't want to touch the other body on those creased hands. So then I started to use touch messages. And quite soon I started to be so interesting that I asked my professor if I can start to look more detail and start to do my PhD work on this. And I was lucky that university here was so open-minded in those days. And it was the first kind of research where we were combining practical exercises and research together. So it's like lived experience-based research work. And we were starting to teach in many countries, and we had a lot of deafblind people. First, of course, when we are living here in Helsinki, it started to Nordic countries, and then spreading to Europe and Brazil and other countries. And in 8 years, it was going so much deeper that we did first model of social haptic communication at the university in Manchester, 1999. Some terms, terminology, some words. You have heard about touch, haptic, haptic signals, haptic communication, and social haptic communication. So what is the connection with these terms? So haptic and haptic exploration is most important thing for deafblind people, because they use touch, they walk around, They feel by their foot, the surroundings, using their hands, recognizing the objects and the environment. That research work has been gone early 1920s already. Haptic signals and haptic communication is device-based information for deafblind people. For example, what is haptic signal? Let's say that you are going other side of the road and you have green and red lights. You can put your hand under the switcher and feel vibration. This is red, do not walk. And then, it's now green. Now you can walk. Now I need to tell to Russ that he has something now on his mobile phone playing or in kitchen or something. Okay, so haptic communication on the research field is a device-based of information. So, for example, if you have a vibrating doorbell system, so you have agreed that certain kind of vibration, and you know, doorbell is ringing. Then the vibration change, baby is crying. So you have agreed these messages beforehand. Social haptic communication is the interaction between two or more
A
people.
comunicação social háptica é a interação entre duas ou mais pessoas. Tá falando errado.
And now interpreter's voice is, I can hear that in Portuguese. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I couldn't use the haptic communication because that was already used. And I was thinking, actually, it's messages between two or more people. That's why we added the word social in the beginning. So that's why we call it social haptic communication. So my research work, the most important result from 18 years research was that we found it with Russ that these touch messages, what we are using on the body, they all have their own grammar. Exactly like the spoken language has their own spoken language grammar phonemes, and sign language has its own grammar called cherems. So touch messages, haptices has their own grammar, and we call them haptemes. And when we have been looking about these haptices, touch messages, and looking about more detail that what is the grammar? So when we touch the other person, we touch a certain location, an area of the body. The touch is made with certain kind of pressure. There is a direction of that touch. There is a speed. And we can recognize, for example, haptic distance. So my research thought is now that those people who are on the very high level of using social haptics, there are those native users. First, when people are starting to know about it, they are on the first level, and they are very basic. A basic haptics is what we call social quick messages. They could be feedback, yes, tapping, no, side to side, coffee, I'm walking, and so on. But then when you go to the second level, you are starting to having more in your lexicon. So you are starting to feel that you need more information. For example, you like to know the face expressions of people. And then the third level is, for example, when Russ is explaining perhaps, I don't know, how to describe the universe and also different kind of planets. So that is totally agreed system to a specific situation. And only the person and perhaps the interpreters and the people who have studied on the specific lexicon knows that. Exactly the same way that if we are learning a new language, we need to go to a specific lexicon system. Okay, what are the food names? What are different vegetables? And so on. Nowadays, if we think how social haptic has developed the last 30 years, it's not only used for deaf-blind people or visually and hearing impaired people. It's used with blind who has hearing. I teach them nowadays to people who have a memory loss, who are in a palliative care in a hospital, and terminal ill people, autistic people who have learning disabilities. So it's not anymore used only with a very small group, but it is enlarged quite a lot, depending what those individual people like to have as their communication. And what is very interesting is that last couple of years' time, different countries have started to develop their hapticis lexicons. Some people call them hapticis dictionaries. Surely here in Europe, they have had European funding to collect hapticis with deafblind people. An example, a couple of months ago, we were in Venice, where we have a first international conference about social haptics. When I analyze that, okay, if we have a one haptic of a yes or no, or that's coffee or walking, so how can we categorize that, what they are based on? Are they all based on signs? Some of them are, but some are also from written language, like based on letters. For example, if you are showing like induction loop that you can listen from your T switch on, it could be letter T. So you can also have different letter-based information on your body. Usually it is connected to that orientation where we are in that moment. For example, body movements. If my husband is in front of me and I need to move, perhaps I touch on the back, left to the right, showing that I am moving to his right side. Or if I'm going to right to the left. Or perhaps I need to go a little bit downwards. So these are more like the body movement-based understanding what you can learn very quickly. Usually they are so-called easy categories because that information is already in your body. When I'm working with memory loss people or congenitally born deafblind, they could be based on your body reactions or your feeling about the environment or the actions. For example, if you are having like a water, so then it is the water kind of feeling very warmly coming up to your head, for example, a shower. One subgroup is those which I categorize as visual perception based. They could be different shapes. If I see a square, I can draw, or I call haptier, that on the back, square, triangle, circle, and different kind of shape and lines. So last 10 years, people have been thinking that, okay, what is the verb when we are doing this on the body? Do I say drawing or signing? I don't use signing because sign language itself is its own three-dimensional language. And here we can have some sign-based information, but it's made of touching, so we call it haptiering. That is the word what we use. If you're interested about more to knowing about these lexicons, I can then write my email on the chat area. So you can then look about it. And if you're interested to having like email from me, but I'm just going to show you that's what I'm doing nowadays. So I'm categorizing all these different haptesis groups. And our lexicon is not based on alphabetical order, but it's based on themes. So we have like confirmations. We can have a body language. We have a navigation haptesis with guide dog haptesis. Different sport haptesis like when swimming, yoga, running, watching football, ice hockey, etc. The environmental orientation can include perhaps showing the routes, that's walking 12 o'clock and then turning to the left, or mapping the environment. One important area where I am talking with deafblind partners, usually like hearing and sighted people, just like myself, we have also so-called private haptesis. So then they are agreed messages with your partner, what we use, and usually other people don't know what they are because it's learned to read each other's touch messages. The user groups in the professional field is very, very large. Here in Nordic countries, we teach these for the interpreters. And like in Finland, the organization who is paying, the government who is paying the interpreter services, they already accepted haptesis as part of interpreting a model. So deafblind people then know that if they want to use haptesis, they can write that to their profile and say, I use finger spelling, I use sign language, I use hands-on signing, and I use haptesis. And I use guiding and description. So deafblind people here, they can describe what kind of services they like or what kind of methods they are using. And then the interpreter, because they have done the deafblind interpreting course, they have these basic skills to start to use it. How about future? It's interesting. For us, for me and my research groups and professionals, haptesis are growing all the time. So the lexicon is growing as the deafblind person noticed, oh, I like to go to have a tandem riding. Do we have any tandem haptesis? Or like last week, we had a request about a famous deafblind English lady who is going to Mount Everest. That what kind of climbing haptesis we can use safely in a cold weather. So think about it, you have a very thick clothes and then is your guide in front or if the person is behind you and how you are doing that. Very, very interesting little exercise to be through. But then if we think about the world, how it's developing, all these digital equipment, all computers and technological innovations. And one important area for deafblind people is, in future, smart clothes. Smart clothes could be like a shirt or vest or part of your sleeve, where we can send haptesis from a distance. Because when we are using social haptic communication, we need to have close contact. But when we are thinking to add haptic communication and social haptic communication, so what is that then? Is that then smart clothes? So it means that the messages are based on haptesis, but the technology is not so clever yet. They can't be human hands on the skin, but they can like mirror a little bit like that, and the deafblind people can understand those messages because they are learned already to use them, so they have the skill to understand. And we were part of that smart clothes project, and we are now interested to see how this pilot work is going on. So in a couple of years' time, we could have a vest. So it means if you there have this smart cloth vest and I'm here in Finland, I can actually then choose from my computer a word, Haptic, to you, and then you can feel that pressure on your heart side, perhaps saying, oh, you are so nice, I love you. And if you're interested about this suitcase smart clothes project, I can also send the information for you. I'm just looking about that. I am almost there, 20 minutes, but my last thing is that why me as a researcher, family member, and a teacher, why I think it's useful to use haptics with different people. It means that they are very silent and quick, real-time, adaptable methods, depending on the receiver's wishes. It can be used on the body in different areas as agreed, hand, shoulder, back, perhaps legs, when the other channels are occupied. And you can at the same time transmit your own emotions and intonations. And through these haptics, we can expand our spatial space and locations and behavior of others. And most important is, as a teacher point of view, that it's possible to teach and learn. And if you like to look more, I can also send our website. I think that Margie and your group has done that already, but it's www.ruspalmer.com. And I can write that to the chat later. Okay. I think that my 20 minutes has gone. And are you happy if I give the space to Russ?
Okay. Am I again?
Yep. Is that okay, Marcia?
Okay, that's okay. I would like to complete my presentation because I've forgotten to tell everybody that you are at the moment the chief of the unity of the deafblind, the Finnish Deafblind Association and Communication for Deafblind People. So yeah. I'm sorry I forgot that because I was so excited to see you here again. And now I know that you are next to Mr. Russ Palmer. So I invite him to come to the screen.
Yes, and I am just moving this a little bit. So I'm just turning. And Russ.
Hi, Russ.
Hi there.
We are very glad to see you here. Okay, Russ is a person with deaf blindness. He uses cochlear implants, right? And now he's sitting on his comfortable chair. This is a description a little bit different, but I'm a person that I'm not really orthodox. And he's a white man, he's wearing glasses, and he's also wearing a blue shirt.
It's better that you are not
Palmer is a music therapist, and he's the founder and developer and also a consultant for people who use those haptic signals. No? So you are, the word is yours, it's your turn, you can speak now, and I promise that I will be very quiet now.
Yes.
Thank you, Russ.
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Russ Palmer, and my sign name is like this. I'm going to talk about social haptics from a user point of view, from a deaf-blind point of view. And the reason I wear dark glasses is so people are aware I cannot see. And I'm wearing a sort of long sleeve, I think, lilac shirt.
Yes.
And dark trousers. And I'm sitting in this chair, which is in our lounge, and I've got the piano on my right side.
Oh, nice.
So it's very useful to have that nearby. I'm also a qualified music therapist, and I do a lot of research work with Rita and also with the EU Suitcase Project, which Rita has mentioned. And I'm also an advisor for different universities, both in the UK, Finland, etc. But my focus today is to talk about how do I perceive social haptics and why do I use it? One of the problems was when we first met in 91, being a spoken language user, I was not using sign language at all. So it was a totally new area for me. And we needed to find a way of bridging that gap between spoken language and sign language. It would take me a very long time to learn sign language. And I'm not communicating much with deaf people during that time when I met Rita. But having said that, I've had a lot of communication now with deaf and deafblind people over the course of the years.
Use hands-on tactile.
And I use hands-on tactile signs, I use finger spelling, and I use improvised signing with deaf as well. I wouldn't call myself a very good sign language user, but I try to improvise where possible. I'm also a very active musician. I write my own music, and I believe you may have a copy of my music somewhere called Loving Touch. That's the latest CD that came out. So why do I use social haptics? Because A, it gives me the quality of information around my environment. If I'm going out with someone, I have to be guided. I use a white cane, and my family member or interpreter will describe to me what's happening around me. Like if we're going to the shops, they will describe the shop items of interest, how much they are, etc. And if I have specific interest, especially vinyl records or CDs or music shops, then I usually have interpreters that are specialists in those specific areas. Because Rita is a non-musician, and she may not always have the understanding of music in the detail I have. However, I have to say she's very good at picking up information at different exhibitions.
Social haptics.
And this is where social haptics come in, because she describes to me the artist name, for example, if I'm looking at a record, what tracks there are, what the cover looks like, etc. Similarly, when we go to a museum, if there's a sculpture or a picture, painting, drawings, or clay work, etc., or very delicate glassware, pottery, you cannot always touch these because they're too fragile, they may be very old. So we have to improvise using different methods of social haptics. If it's a picture or a painting, my interpreter or Rita or family member will draw on my back what we call mapping out what's on the picture, and then drawing the different
haptiering.
What Rita calls haptiering. Even if there's colours, they will specify those colours. Sometimes if it's very noisy, it may not be possible for me to pick up the spoken language. So we have other different methods of doing that through haptesis. Similarly, if I'm going to a concert, I may need to know if there's a certain instrument playing at a certain time, especially if it's a particular concert piece, like an orchestra, that is playing a particular instrument, a melody line. And we can illustrate the different tones or the different instruments playing at that particular moment.
Where do you demonstrate that?
And we usually have this done on my arm, for example. Or if I'm lucky, I may have two interpreters. One person may do the rhythm, and the other one, usually a lady, will do the movement of a dance, if there's a dance involved, or portrays to me the actual melody of the music. So it all depends on the type of performance you're going to.
Give an example about musical haptesis: piano, violin, drum.
Piano is like playing the piano keyboards on your arm here, between the elbow and the wrist. If it's a violin, it's usually in the upper range, between your elbow and shoulder. If it's like a brass instrument, it may be like a fireworks going off, blah, blah, blah. Or it may be using two hands to give a full sound of what's happening, if it's a load of strings playing, or if the brass, etc. Or even percussion. So if anybody's interested, there's probably information, I think, on our website about this. The other thing that's also useful is if you're going to a bowling match, how do I know how many pins are standing up if I've thrown the ball down? Because I can't see them. And the most infuriating thing is where you have two pins, one in there, and everything's gone in the middle. So you need to use two more balls to hit them. So I get information how the position of those pins, how many are standing, how many have gone away.
And how the ball is.
And where the ball is actually going, because sometimes if I haven't used enough power, the ball will stop right in front of the pins. And that's the worst position to be in. Or it may miss everything. A football match. You can also do that on the back. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, you can only really try to get an idea of what's happening, where the ball is going, the goalpost, either end, etc. So one can improvise in many ways. And this is the beauty of social haptics. It doesn't have to be one way or another way. It depends on the person who needs it.
How about you are interesting about universe and stars and space?
Yes, now this is an interesting subject. More recently, I think in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of rockets going up, Perseverance going to Mars, SpaceX being launched. How do you describe what's happening? How do they look? Because my image, because I cannot see anymore since 2015, and I have an image of the space program years ago when I was about 10 years old. And I remember seeing this great big Saturn V rocket, etc. And the design of the rockets has changed completely. It's so different now. Sometimes it's very difficult to understand the Mars little helicopter. My perception of a helicopter is you've got blades, a very thin body, and then you've got a tail. In Mars, you don't have that at all. You have a little square box with the blades because of the different atmospheric changes. So you have to adapt this in different ways. Another point is what we call astronomy haptises. How do you describe the stars in the sky, night sky? The position of the stars, or where the planets are. I remember when I was in Denmark visiting a great observatory, where I think Rita was with me, and I think my colleague Steve was with me at that time. And we went into this very difficult spiral staircase right up to where the telescope was. One person was looking through the telescope, like a little finder, and one was describing on the back.
Mm.
And I had a little bit of vision, very, very small, but just a little bit. And I remember seeing Jupiter with all the bands of cloud, plus two little white dots, two little planets going across. And it made it much easier for me to understand what's happening in that sense. So there's many areas, and we had a very interesting talk when Stina and I gave a presentation about astrohaptises in Venice. And the response was quite overwhelming.
Mm.
And then somebody asked, well, how do you describe black holes? And that was quite an interesting question. If anybody's interested, there are 2 articles on my website on spaceflight which describes how we do it. For example, if you want to do the solar system, if you put your thumbs together and spread out your hands horizontally, your little finger on the left hand can represent Mercury, and to the left of Mercury is our sun.
Mm.
So the little finger on the fingernail represents Mercury. Moving to the next finger, we have Venus, and then we have good old Earth, and then we have Mars. Where the 2 thumbs are, we have the asteroid belt. They're those rocks that sort of circulate around Jupiter, and sometimes they may even threaten Earth from time to time, or fly very close to Earth. And then we have the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and little Pluto is somewhere around wherever, because it has a very unusual orbit. And that's just give you an idea of the sort of things you can do.
But that gives you accessibility to the visual pictures and understanding, for example, the order of the planets or where they are connected to each other and so on. Because the information usually, when they are lecturing, is very fast and they don't describe.
No.
Yeah.
And that can be very challenging.
Mm.
Similarly, if, like I was when I went into hospital, where you need to have what we call hospital haptises, especially if you're wearing 2 cochlear implants and you have to take your hearing aids or implants off at night time, you can't hear anything. And the last thing you want to do is to have to be woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning, put your implants or hearing aids in and listen to what somebody wants to give you. It may just be a blood pressure check.
Mm.
So we identified different hospital haptises that could actually assist if my spoken language is English and maybe someone doesn't speak so good English. So you have to give them some idea
what is going to happen next,
how or what's happening. So you don't have to worry about putting your implants in or it's an injection, etc. And it makes it a much more calming experience. Being in hospital is not very nice anyway, but sometimes we don't have any choice. And certainly the older you get, it seems to be that, we have to always check ourselves from time to time. So what I'm trying to say here, as a user of social haptic communication, I find my life has actually become much more enriched, better quality of information, and I have this access to the wider world in a way I never thought possible. And I do remember when I first started to pick up what we call the yes and no hapteses, it took me quite a long time to feel or understand what do they really mean. But for those of you who use hands-on signing or some tactile method of communication, it may be quicker for you to pick these up. Similarly, when I had the cochlear implants, I still had a little bit of vision, very narrow, 6 degrees, I think it was. And I thought I wouldn't need to use social haptics anymore because I could maybe pick up more spoken language information. But unfortunately, the vision changed and got worse. And I find I needed more environmental description. So when I used my personal assistants or interpreters, they also give me the same quality of information that what Rita and I use in our own family situation. But they need that training in the initial point to understand. It's true that a lot of people pick up certain aspects of social haptics that seem very visual, that seem very easy to use, but you need to have the understanding, what does it mean to receive that information yourself, and what we call the philosophy of understanding. You need to be able to feel it, you need to be able to use it, and it takes maybe a little bit of time to get into that way of thinking.
Yep.
Totally.
So now it's 25:02, and do you like to give now the words to Stina, our colleague?
Yes.
And
I hope Stina was there.
yeah.
So thank you for listening, and I'll probably be seeing you again later.
Okay.
Okay.
Marcia, I'm just having this.
Okay,
And I know that
here. Well, I'm not on. Okay, I'm in screen back. Well, first of all, before we invite Stina, I would like really to thank you, Russ and Rita, and I would like to emphasize the importance of this couple, because they are really the creators of this concept that we are now studying, that is the social haptic communication. So thank you for your contribution. And now be welcome, Stina. I present you Stina, Dr. Stina. She's from the University of Turku. That's right. I'm not sure of the pronunciation.
Yeah, that is right. Yes.
Okay. In Finland, I suppose.
Yes, in Finland.
Yeah.
That's true.
So she's in Finland. Thank you. And she's a woman of white skin, short hair. She's wearing glasses and wearing a green blouse. Okay. So, Stina, very welcome. Thank you very much for your participation. It's your turn.
Yeah, this is Tina speaking. Thank you for inviting me. And Russ, yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
I thought I would look at haptises from an interpreting point of view, because as I'm a researcher at the Department of Computing, so it used to be Department of Information Technology, but now it's Department of Computing at the University of Turku here in Finland, but I'm also an interpreter for the deafblind. And I chose today's topic as haptises in interpreting, and how I use haptises with different types of clients. So before introducing any client to haptises, we need to agree on the use of touch. it is so intimate way of communicating through one's body. And haptics as a system, as a communication method, as any other communication method or system, needs to be learned. And for learning something, you need practice and repetition. It needs time. It takes time for learning haptics. And effort. You have to be motivated to learn them as well. But once we get through that initial steps, then we can start with the basics, as Riitta has already portrayed in her part of the presentation. We start with feedback, yes and no. And once they have been learned and acquired, then we move on to directions. But actually, one of the first things ever is a letter-based haptics. It is a big X on somebody's back. That means emergency. You need to get away from the situation. But yes, after we have escaped that dangerous situation, then we explain. So it is not only a denote that you need to get away, but it is also a promise. Everything will be explained later when we are safe. So I think it's very important to note that it's not only one way, but it has a two-way message. That single haptics. And that is sometimes haptics have dual meanings. So it's not only one meaning, but two meanings in the same haptics. Haptics, when I use them as an interpreter, they save time and they save effort, both for the client and for me as an interpreter. How does it do that? It decreases the effort of the client to try to hear or try to see based on their communication method, but it allows them to use their body and their sense of touch to understand something, to get the message. It also saves my time and saves my energy, so I don't have to repeat things so many times, but I can rely on haptics to relay the information safely and securely and directly in real time, which is also a good thing. It is enhancing the main ways of communication for the client. It enhances either the spoken language communication, as Russ demonstrated in his part of the talk, or then sign language user. We can add haptics to the sign language communication. We can still use the directions. We can give feedback within the sign language communication or conversation. And it also, as I mentioned before, only briefly, but now a little bit more detail, haptics enhance and increase the client's security. So it makes the client safe, because haptics always relay important information in them. So it is safe for the client to get the message in its whole fast, and it's secure as the client does not need to try to hear or try to see. But as haptisis is a human natural way of communication and a part of it, there's also individual variation in haptisis. So everybody, if you look at your own hands, they are different to the other person's hands next to you. So there are always variation in haptisis. But the variation goes within certain limits, so that the haptis is still understood the same way. What haptises do in general way, they open up our bodies to communication, so that our body becomes a platform for communication. In that way, it is something that we researchers are not so much have been looking into. So there are still new research methods needed to study haptisis in further detail. But as an interpreter, I'm coming back as an interpreter again. As interpreters, we create so-called touch profiles of different clients. What are the areas that the client is okay to touch? So does he or she use the upper arm or the whole arm? Upper back or the whole back? Some clients only want to use the back of the hand for haptisis. That touch profile includes the areas where to touch, the set of haptises they are using. Not everybody uses the haptises the same way as Ross does. Some only use a very limited set of haptises, but that for them is equally enriching and important as an enhancing of communication. So, and even if I, as an interpreter, know more haptises than the client does, I only use the limited set that the client is using, let's say. So there are individual ways of using haptises. Depending on how long have you used haptises, what are your needs? What are the situations where you need haptises? Some people's life circles or life environment are very restricted, but even they can use haptises in very meaningful way that it enriches their life and their quality of communication. And I also want to note that some of us interpreters in Finland also use haptises between each other. So one interpreter can use haptises to another interpreter to say something important. And I think that as a development has yet created a new tier of using haptises. Professional to another professional. And I think it adds one important perspective in using haptises. It is a very discreet method. So as it might be that nobody else notices that you are using haptises to the other person. But what it also is very efficient also between professionals. So you can give information without disturbing the other by using speech or signing. I think that is my talk as of today, and I encourage all comments or questions about this. Thank you.
Okay. Have you finished? Hi, Stina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for your contribution. It's a pleasure for us. And we have a lot of comments in the chat. People really very enthusiastic about all this information, because social haptic communication is still something very new for us. We are really starting to deep in this subject through Russ and Rita. So thank you again. The people are asking, the people who is following us on YouTube, they are asking some references. We are sending them the site of Russ. Do you have any other reference that we could send them now in the chat, Stina?
I don't know what you have already previously sent.
We are online now. We are just telling them that about the site of Russ and Rita, because we know we have a lot of information there. So if you have anything that you would like to share with us, we can put it on the chart, because they are really asked reference, because this concept of aptesis and aptems, all this is very new to us. There are a lot of teachers and professionals in the audience, and this is probably the first time they hear about this concept. That's why they are asking.
Right.
And we have some questions here. I'm trying to translate them the best I can. Okay. Let me see. We have one important researcher. This is Professor Fatima Kader. And she's asking for an example of aptesis and aptemis. So choose any one of those, any one of you. If you can show how we, in practice, we use this, because it's really a very new concept.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Russ and Rita are better to demonstrate, because they are.
The next question. The next question will be for you, Stina. I will really translate, because it's the same person, because it's Fatima. He's asking. She's asking if in Finland, what is the word you use? So, because here we have a distinction of interpreter for deaf people, and we say guide interpreter for people with deaf blindness. Do you use only one word, or how do you make this difference? So those are the questions. Rita will answer first, and the next time it's you. Okay, just for you to speak.
Let's do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Rita,
okay.
Yeah.
So somebody asked it before about the references. Stina and Russ, we have written articles, and they are on our website. So I advise that if they go to those Haptesis, our articles, and then we have collected the references there. So if they want to have quickly something, that is one possibility.
Thank you.
But then the next question, for example, if we take that coffee, what I was showing, so that is a sign language base. So we have a Finnish coffee. Now we break the sign. We take one hand, and now, Russ, when I'm doing that, I'm just going to look at the camera. So I'm doing that to your arm or here. So what do you feel?
Circular motion.
Circular motion, okay. So the sign language grammar, I can use it this way. It's still circle. I can use one finger. It's still circle. So I know that coffee haptesis is circle information to Russ. So that is the movement and location already there, and the direction of the movement. So here I can go to the right, to the left, or left to the right. It doesn't matter on this haptesis. Then What is changed now?
Harder.
It's harder. So I was using more pressure. So then the coffee changed. Well, what it is now then it's more
something like espresso.
Espresso. So very dark, very strong one. Then if I'm changing one Haptic, what is the size? I can then ask if you like to have a small cup or mug or perhaps a tall coffee. So these are Haptics. So I can change the location, pressure, speed, rhythmical element, and so on this
context.
On this context of coffee.
Rita, may I add something on that?
Okay.
So the Haptic is always coffee, but changing different Hapteams within the Haptic coffee, changing some elements or aspects of that coffee.
No, this is like a normal black coffee, what you have learned.
Yes.
Then that is like a concept of that, what you have learned to drink your normal coffee.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
so
changing one Hapteam of it gives another related meaning to the coffee.
Yes,
for example,
exactly.
Tall coffee or a strong coffee. Yes.
Yeah. So if you are teaching about congenital, so that is then to you what you have learned in your service house. That could be then with your certain kind of milk perhaps or something. So you have that experience of drinking that taste of coffee. But then if we go to a restaurant or bar, we don't know in that environment what coffee they have. So there you probably need to ask that if that is a strong coffee there or whatever, or do you need milk or how many sugars. But the base when you are starting to teach is that you have that experience of your own like home taste on that. Because I thought that if you have a lot of people who are working with learning disabilities and congenitally deafblind, so then when you are teaching that on that concept when they are drinking something, so then that coffee Haptic is connected to that certain taste what you have there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I hope this is.
Thank you. Stina, can you answer the question about how the word that you use for interpreter and if you have a different expression when you work with deafblind people? Because here we have really two words for that.
Yeah. So what I understand when I read the question in Portuguese is that your system of naming interpreters, as it were, is similar to the English one. So they have interpreters and guide interpreters.
Yeah.
But we in Finland speak about interpreters and then interpreters for the deafblind. So we have, for us, it's actually one very long word, kuurosokeiden tulkki, which denotes an interpreter for the deafblind.
Yeah. And one correction, Russ, what are they in England? They are
communicator guide. Another word.
Communicator guide. Yeah.
Communicator guides, yes.
Yes, because these words really, they bring also some concepts together. So that's why, because here we have also the question, and how do you train these people? What is the, how is the graduation for that? Things like that. Okay. For the audience, I would like to remember you that asking for reference, there are some dissertation and some theses already in Portuguese, so you can really make a search. And we have the special thesis of Elaine Vilela. Her thesis was really about this theme. So you have some material also in Portuguese showing and giving some examples. Well, we would like to hear from all of you for hours and hours and hours, but we have really to have a break. So thank you, Stina. Nice to meet you. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Rita. No? And okay, now we are
Nice to
going
meet
to
you
ask
too.
for Alex. Where is Alex? Come on, Alex. Alex, where is he? Because we're going to have a break now. Obrigada, Alex.
Nós que agradecemos.
We are the ones who thank you. We'd like to thank you, Professor PhD Marcia Noronha, and our invitees, Rita Latin, Russ Palmer, and Stina Olaya, for your powerful speech today. If you are on YouTube watching our event and you haven't signed up, you can do it. So you have the certification in the end. And if you are liking this event, please sign up follow our channel. So we are going to have a break from now to 2 p.m. And we're going to have the session about the experience of deaf and blind people. We're waiting for you at 2 p.m. Bye.